When I first really fell in love with reading in like middle school, DNFing a book wasn't really something that I felt that people could do. Let's talk about the books I did not finish this year. It is December 12th, the day that I'm recording this. Will this video go up in December? Who knows? I don't. I have a pretty strong feeling that I'm not gonna DNF any more books this year. I'm in the middle of a couple that I'm feeling pretty strongly about finishing. So we'll see. Maybe I'll pop in and add an extra book that I did, in fact, not finish. My journey with DNFing books has really been new this year, I guess you can say, in that when I first really fell in love with reading in like middle school, DNFing a book wasn't really something that I felt that people could do. I think when you are that age, that's not really like a thought that you have. There isn't a thought of like purposefully closing a book because you're not enjoying it. Instead, I felt, at least for me personally, that any book I was not enjoying, I still finished. I would still finish books that I was not enjoying. I would still finish series that I wasn't really enjoying. I just didn't have this like set idea of not finishing a book simply because I wasn't liking it. I have a couple different lists of books that I want to read before I die. I'm pretty close to finishing both of those lists. I'll expand more on those on a different video, but I just want to throw that out there. Because of those lists, there's books that I read for the past like 3-4 years that I hated but felt compelled to finish because of this list that is entirely arbitrary. I'm the only one holding myself to it. But as I've completed more and more of those books, I fill my time reading books outside of that list. And because of that, I've realized that I just need to be more okay DNFing a book. It is okay if a book is not for me and I'm not enjoying it. Even if the reason is super small and petty, that's okay. So last year, I believe I DNF'd 2 or 3 books, and this year I DNF'd 14. So that's quite a large jump. Going from basically finishing every book I ever lay my hands on to 14 books over the year that I decided that's okay, I don't need to finish, is kind of a big deal for me. So I want to share what those books were and the reasons why. So first up on the list is This Is How You Lose the Time War. I know that this book is so well beloved, and I love that for everyone else. It just was not for me. I DNF'd it at the 30% mark. It was an audiobook that I listened to. When it comes to books, I don't love super, super flowery and abstract language. I like when things are a bit more concrete, even if that is talking about like similes or metaphors or the symbolism. I just prefer things to be a bit more concrete. Have found that I don't really have the extrapolation knowledge yet to really read a book that has very abstract language and understand what it means and what's going on. And when it comes to This Is How You Lose the Time War, that was my issue. I felt that the language was too abstract for me to really buy into the plot and enjoy what I was reading. I thought that the dialogue between Red and Blue was also just like really difficult because you really are reading like you're reading these flowery love letters, and that's awesome for them, but it just wasn't working for me. I'm so sorry. Maybe I'll pick it up again down the road. But also, this book does fall into 3 categories that I just don't generally enjoy. I very much picked it up because of the hype that I had heard online, but I don't really enjoy romance. I don't really enjoy science fiction, and I don't really enjoy fantasy. And I would say that this book is those 3 things. So I'm so sorry. I didn't like it. The next book that I did not finish last year is The Devil House by John Darnell. Um, I don't even really remember this book, if I'm being honest. I DNF'd it at 37% of the way through the audiobook, and I said that it is a classic case of the description of the book not matching the content. The book wasn't giving me what I wanted and expected. The first part of the book is fine, but the second part is such a complete departure from what was already established and was, quite frankly, confusing. By the time I adjusted what was said in the second part, the third part came in and disrupted me. I wasn't vibing. I'm trying to even remember what this book was really about. I think it was an investigation into this like haunted house kind of situation, this hell house. And I liked the first part, but then I think there was something about like a video store, and I don't even remember, but it just wasn't working for me. I didn't love the writing, and it just wasn't, the description very much was not what I felt was being given. So I DNF'd this one, and because I can't even remember it, I don't feel at all bad about it. And I always get the Devil House and Hell House mixed up in my brain. So whenever I see praise for Hell House, I'm like, how? But that is on my TBR, so I'll read it someday. The next book I DNF'd was The Three by Sarah Lotz. This is about a plane. It's about three simultaneous plane crashes and the three survivors from each of them, and how like there's something kind of mysterious, supernatural, like not quite right going on with these characters, and this kind of like mass investigation that's going on of these three characters. I believe they're all children too. And it just was taking so long to get to the point. I DNF'd this at 37%. It was an audiobook. And I just like, things were building so slowly. And I was just getting frustrated because I had listened to 3 hours of the audiobook at probably 1.5 to 1.75 times speed. And it just wasn't progressing. Just things weren't happening, and I was just getting kind of frustrated with it. A lot of the times before I DNF a book, I'll look at the reviews and see if other people are saying the same thing. And I do remember people were saying the same thing, that it just wasn't really building that fast, and that the payoff that we got wasn't quite worth it. So this was another book that I DNF'd this year. The next book is The Mountain in the Sea. This was also an audiobook, and I got 45% of the way into this. And again, it is a science fiction book, and I'm not a big sci-fi person. And it sounded really good. I remember seeing this one in Barnes & Noble and seeing the cover and just being amazed, because the cover is amazing. I love it. But it just, I think similar to The Three, it was just taking such a long time to build into the story that I wanted it to be, that I just wasn't really vibing with it. I said that I thought this was going to be a sci-fi thriller, but it was just sci-fi. It took so long for the thriller part of this book to really start that I had already lost interest. I wanted more action and more suspense from this novel, but wasn't getting anything close to that. I also found the short chapters to be disruptive, especially since each chapter begins with an excerpt from one of the characters' books. I felt that just when things were really starting to roll, and when I was really starting to understand the characters and setting, a new chapter would start and I would have to start that process again. It just wasn't for me. If I remember correctly, this book jumped around from different points of views, and I think that was really jarring for me as a reader, because I don't recall the chapters being that long. So again, like as I'm getting comfortable with this character, what's going on with them, it would just be completely disrupted, and they felt so disconnected from each other that I was just kind of fed up with it. The next book is The Unbearable Lightness of Being, another audiobook. I DNF'd at 34%. This one wasn't really that bad and in any egregious sense. I wasn't invested in the characters and the story. It was really slow. I might pick this one up again later, but it's not on the top of my TBR by any means. I just felt very meh honestly. Okay, the next book. Okay. Next book, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. I DNF'd this at 44%, and this was a book that I read as an ebook. So, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, it is a story about a man who is, I believe, selectively mute, and he is living in this home, and people in the town are basically coming to him for advice. But he doesn't speak to them. They just kind of like, it's very much like a therapist who just nods and writes things down kind of situation. And it was just not great. I didn't find the characters to be that likable or what was going on with them to be that likable. There's also a good amount of characters. I believe there were 5 that would come to this man to talk to him. And they weren't distinct enough from each other, except for, I guess, like she's not even the main character, but the girl in the novel, I don't even remember her name, but she is like the only distinct one, and it's because she's a girl. I believe all the rest were men, but like her character development, I wasn't even a fan of either, because she starts as this very like tomboy, and then she slowly morphs into this like very feminine character. But I didn't feel like that was because she was like growing up and that's how she wanted to be, but very much because of like societal expectations. I don't know, I didn't like it, and I really started to feel myself kind of powering through it. I think my hold on this book lapsed twice, and after the second time I was like, okay, that's a sign, and I closed it, and I will not return to it. I know it's so well loved, and I did look at, the Wikipedia. I did research on this to try to understand like why and if I should keep reading it, and I just couldn't. So sorry. Okay, next book is The Woods All Black. I DNF'd this at 23%. I remember it was quite early into the book, and I like to think I'm a good ally, but I did not like how this book talked about gender. I just felt like it was so aggressively in your face, and I guess I can understand that that's how it might feel for people who are not cisgendered, who don't express themselves as like the very, societal male or female. But I just like, I felt like it could have been done in a much better way. I thought that the character themselves, sorry, my husband called me. I have no idea what I was saying. The Woods All Black, I just didn't like how they were talking about gender. I think I could have done a bit of a better job explaining kind of like what I meant. I kind of glossed over the main character, who is in fact a transgender person, and I just feel like there's a more tactful way to write trans characters than this author did. And I also just like, it was in such like it was just really, I hate to say it was really annoying, but it was kind of really annoying, because like the other characters would be like, oh, hello, miss. And then in their dialogue, this character is like, haha, they think I'm a girl. And it's like, right, you want them to think you're a girl. And like the book takes place in like pioneering America. So I understand that this is like, talking about trans people was not a thing, and I understand that. I just think there was a better way to do it. And it was just so aggressive and so in my face, and I just got really annoyed about it. If you know of a book from the point of view of a transgender person that is good and well written, I would love to read it, because it's not, I just want to like be so clear that them being trans is not why I stopped reading this book. It was that they were just annoying. I DNF'd it. So sorry. Okay, the next book, Where the Dead Wait. This was a book about a failed Antarctica expedition, where the main character was the only survivor out of everyone, and there was like suspected cannibalism and like ghost mischief, so it's supposed to be like a suspenseful thriller. And the book is about that main character going back to the site for some reason. I honestly don't really remember. And I DNF'd it because it was just taking so long to get to that point. And I wasn't engaged with the characters or the setting or the plot or why he was going back or any of his like inner turmoil. I just didn't really care. The author also didn't do a great job with the like setting of the book, in that it was supposed to take place during like the 19th century, but if you told me it took place in 2024, I would believe you in a heartbeat. So I just didn't feel like these characters were of that like era. And it was just moving really slow, and I didn't want to continue it. Okay, next book. This is the book that I DNF'd the quickest, and I have the least to say about it. It is I Might Be in Trouble. I just wasn't vibing with it. I don't feel any ill will towards this book. I don't have any strong opinions. It wasn't catching my attention. And that was that. I DNF'd it at 10%, and I said simply wasn't feeling it. And that is that. Okay, the next book is Indian Burial Ground. I DNF'd this at 10% and had listened to the audiobook. Now, I do think it's very important that I put a lot of emphasis on that I listened to the audiobook of this, because the male narrator, so it's a dual POV, and it flips between a female and a male character, and the male narrator had such an awful cadence. So it's about Native Americans, and there's like Native American culture, and you know how there's that like very stereotypical like Native American cadence? It was like that, but like 10 times worse. The like inflection that this narrator had, the like ups and downs of their voice, the pauses, it just was really awful and really distracting. Oh my gosh, it would cause me to just completely zone out and not focus on anything that I was listening to, because I was just like so just thrown off by it. I really hated it. This is a book that I might pick back up later as either a physical book or an ebook, but I don't think I will ever get through the audiobook. Oh my gosh, I hated it so much. I'm so sorry to the narrator, but it was really bad. It was really bad. It was really bad. Okay, the next book, In the Woods by Tana French. This was just another really slow, really drawn out book for me, where I did not care about the characters, and they felt so stereotypically detective. And it's the main character and his partner, and I just didn't like their relationship either. I didn't feel like they had any actual chemistry. I wasn't invested in them as this like partnership. I wasn't invested in his backstory. I wasn't invested in him. I just didn't care. I DNF'd this at like 9% because I just wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't feeling it. And I remember I looked at the reviews, and some of the more negative reviews had said about the same thing, that it was just really slow and it wasn't worth it. So I gave up on it. Almost to the end here. Brutes by Diz Tate. I DNF'd this for a very similar reason that I DNF'd This Is How You Lose the Time War. And that is because it felt like, you know how there's like two types of A24 movies? There's A24 movies that are really good, and then there's A24 movies that have no plot and are all style. Brutes by Diz Tate felt like the latter, where it was just all style with so little substance. I also don't think that I enjoy books where the main point of view is the point of view of multiple characters in one, and that it's not about any single character, it's about the we of it. And I don't know, I just didn't really like that. Since DNFing this book, I read The Virgin Suicides, which was also not a good book, but it had a similar thing where the point of view was this like collective we, and I didn't really like it. I can't think of a lot of books where that has been the point of view style. So I can't say whether it's just these two books are bad examples of it or what, but it hasn't worked for me. I feel like it is so vague, especially with Brutes, and that I didn't really feel like I was learning about any of the girls that were involved in this story. Not even the one that like goes missing, I think. Or maybe she herself. I really don't know, and I don't remember because it was just so like flowery, and this prose was so just like it was so about the like vibes without being about anything else, and I just was not a fan. Okay, another kind of soft DNF for me is Harvest Home. I started reading this at the very beginning of October because it was October and I wanted to read horror books. And I instead read a string of not good horror. This was another instance of it just being too slow for the build. Hi, I'm in bed now. I don't want it to come off as if I never enjoy a book that has a slow build, because I just don't think that's true. There's lots of books that I've read that do have a much slower build to them that I have really enjoyed. Despite my other issues with Jane Eyre, for example, I felt like the slow build to like the main meat of the plot in that was worth it, because you got so much backstory of Jane and her life, and you actually kind of grew with her. But in a lot of these books that I DNF this year, it just felt like there wasn't any progression even happening. Because it's not that I don't like a slow build. I don't mind a slow build. It's just that I didn't feel like there was a payoff coming or coming anytime soon. I felt like there was just other things that I could have read that I would have enjoyed that would have given me that payoff much faster and given me a much more satisfying payoff. This was a book that I read the ebook of. I read 21% of it, and nothing was happening. Just nothing was happening. It had a really good setting and a really good setup, but just nothing was happening. And I'm so sorry, but at 21%, I want something to happen. That's nearly a fourth of the book. So I DNF'd it. I might come back to it later. Maybe if I can get my hands on the audiobook so it can go a bit faster. I'm not sure, but as of right now in this year, we did not finish it. Okay, and the last and most recent book that I have DNF'd is Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I thought that Maddie, the main character, was really annoying to listen to. I understand that people in a domestic violence situation will have similar thoughts that Maddie does. I've never been in a domestic violence situation, so I can't speak on that, but I can understand and empathize that those are going to be similar thought processes that someone experiencing that kind of abuse might have. However, it was really annoying to listen to. It was just getting so grating to listen to her. And I couldn't, I was already not a fan of it. And then it was getting really repetitive. She spoke like a child, which is kind of confusing because you're never actually told, at least as far as I got, you're never told how old she is. It's kind of hinted at that she might be a lot younger than we are supposed to believe, or she believes, but like it was like she was talking like a 12-year-old, not like a 16-year-old, you know? And so that was really annoying. I kind of guessed what her story and situation was pretty early on, so spoilers, I guess. Maybe if I'm right, I don't know. I think that William, who is her abusive husband, abducted her at a very young age and has kind of like brainwashed her into thinking that, she has to be this like stay-at-home homesteading wife who is older than she actually is. And okay, so then these hunters show up and they're like doing research, right? And Maddie's talking about there's like this thing in the woods that is super dangerous. It's bigger than a bear, and it's this thing in the woods. And they run into these like hunters, these like researchers, and one of them like recognizes Maddie and it's like, I know you from somewhere. And it's probably from her missing persons pictures and flyers is my guess. Doesn't really matter. So then, like a day later, William, the husband, is out and it's just Maddie at home, and these hunters find their like cabin. And so she's like talking to them and they're like, yeah, we're gonna help you escape. Like, this guy's clearly abusing you. And she's like, no, we can't. There's this monster in the woods. And they're like, sorry, Sasquatch? I like wish I sorry, it's getting so serious. I wish I was joking. But they're like they tell her that they're like super into cryptids. And that was the final straw. That was the final straw for me. I was like, I cannot take these men seriously. I can't take them seriously. There was like, oh my gosh, Maddie was just like insufferable to listen to. I feel like we as the audience should have been in on how old she was and what year it was, but instead we were just kind of left in the dark. The first couple chapters, it feels like it is like the 1800s or like early 1900s, but then these hunters come along and they have like iPhones. And so that was just like really jarring. Maddie is old enough to get pregnant, and it's talked about her miscarriages. So it's like she's old enough to get pregnant, but she's talking like she's 12. And I just, I really didn't like it. I really didn't like it. I DNF'd it at 34%. And I don't think I'm ever going to return to it. Those are all the books that I DNF'd in 2025. Hopefully, knock on wood, I don't DNF any other books. I don't think I will, but we'll see. If so, I'll pop in right here and let you know. How many books did you DNF this year? Do you DNF a lot of books? Are you like me, where you used to not and now you're okay with it? What's the silliest reason you ever DNF'd a book? I would love to know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one, probably in the new year. Okay, peace and love.